Well, welcome. Oh my gosh, here we are, the December edition of the PKI Solutions monthly webinar series. I think this is a monumental one. I'm joined by Jake Grand-Lenard. Jake, I don't think you and I have done one of these webinars together for just a hot minute, I think, right?
No, it's been a little while. Schedules don't usually align like this.
No, they don't. And I'm excited to see that we have a number of people joining us so far. Thank you for taking time out of your busy December schedules to come hang out, talk a little bit about PKI. This is kind of obviously a topic that's near and dear to Jake and I. Just getting a chance to talk about PKI. I think we're just going to talk about some of the things that we've kind of seen this year in the industry, as well as at our customers. Jake, you're kind of touching our customers on a regular basis. As usual, the recording will be up and available for people to stream afterwards. So if you have colleagues that aren't able to join, we'll make that available. If you're looking for something to do and avoid the family during the holidays and you want to watch the video again, that'll be available too. I know our team is standing by to quickly get this put together. So let's, Jake, do we need any introduction? I even have a nice little Latin fill in there for me. I think this, basically it's
testing people to see what they can speak.
Yeah, exactly. So if anyone wants to translate the Latin here, I'll let our crack marketing team know that I've got a new description here. But
I can throw one at you real quick, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark is the one who I don't talk to forever about PKI, and when I am really stumped, I message him, and somehow he still has the answer, which is slightly annoying.
No. This is the other way around. Where now I have to come to you and talk. So recently there was we just added EJBCA to Spotlight, and I was really nervous because I was the one that the product team invited in to get my opinion on stuff, and I'm like, Jake has touched this way more than I have. So yeah, the tides are turning very quickly on this kind of stuff. We're going to talk just a little bit about what's the consistent issues that we hear from customers, both from leadership and the frontline employees, issues that we saw repeatedly through the year, and what breaks most often. Honestly, it's probably the same stuff that we talked about, although I'm really kind of excited to kind of talk about some of the stuff that we just got done doing around CRL partitioning and some of the interesting things that are there. So if you haven't delved much into the new ADCS CRL partitioning stuff, we've got some interesting things. So we'll talk about that as well. So why don't we jump into this? And Jake, I know you and I deal with this all of the time, where a lot of times organizational leadership, they don't necessarily speak PKI, they don't spell PKI, it's not in their language,
right?
And a lot of times it's just kind of taken for granted, let alone thinking about the resilience and security. And it's not until something breaks or a pen test finds something wrong that they suddenly care.
Right.
And this is something that you regularly engage with customers on.
Yeah, I would say it's getting along the lines of almost like a DNS. Everyone just expects it to work, but boy, when it doesn't, does it cause problems? And then it comes to the forefront, and then suddenly everyone wants to know about it.
Yeah.
What's going on? What can we do differently?
Exactly. And it's that age-old thing of, what the heck is PKI? Why did it break? Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. We're not going to invest in fixing it, and then they're just right back on that kind of hamster wheel. We have been spending, I don't know, for me, 20, 25 years talking about PKI. Jake, I know you're over 20 years now.
Yep.
It's consistently going back to deal with leadership that may have things like, well, it hasn't bitten us yet, or hasn't bitten us recently.
Right.
It does okay, these types of things. And, I love this quote from a movie, a couples retreat, Vince Vaughn, and they're sitting in therapy, and they say something like, "We get along okay." And the therapist goes, I think we should be doing a little better than just getting along okay. It's kind of funny talking to some of our customers, and they're literally like cross fingers, and they go, "Well, it hasn't bitten us so far. We're okay."
Right.
And that's a challenge, because I know you were just working with a customer that they want to talk about like YubiKey and smart cards and all these other things. And there's really no thought whatsoever to whether that foundation that they have is secure.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. If you don't build your mansion on sand.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. You need to have a strong foundation, and that sets the path for everything in the future.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting thing where I think a lot of times it's just things that scare us are harder to kind of embrace and talk about. So I think organizations and maybe leadership they don't know what to ask, and they don't know where to go. So it tends not to be the conversation that's had. But inevitably, we see organizations that are affected from resilience. No, it's the ones where their retail point of sale systems have certificates, and they've focused a lot on CLM and how do I make sure the cash register has a certificate, and how do I spend $1 million on a product to automate that? But then they just assume the PKI is up and running, and one failed CRL renders all of those cash registers.
Yeah, a single point of failure on CRLs. Something so simple as that. The weakest link in your chain. So that's what bites a lot of times.
Yeah, I think probably the best advice that we can give is to organizations thinking about, how do I communicate to my leadership the significance of what we do, and just kind of that foundational technology is, okay, we're talking about all these AI things, firewall things, zero trust things. Okay, what if it breaks? What if this foundational thing underneath it breaks? We don't have any tools. We don't have any way of doing it. So I think the interesting thing is, this is no different than the issues that we talked about 10 or 20 years ago of, if your PKI breaks, a lot of stuff gets affected. It's just that people are using more and more certificates, and they still struggle with this stuff.
Yep, tighter and tighter. We continue, even though I feel like we hear less about PKI and as a whole, it's leveraged more and more. It just continues to grow, the use cases.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just an assumed technology that is, we push the button, we plug it in, we're done, we kind of move on, and it's forgotten.
Yep.
So I think we still struggle with that. Visibility, just the fact that I think almost every single problem that I can think of over the last 20 years with a customer inevitably is seen too late, because the problem with PKI is, when you see the problem, it's usually in firefighting mode. Something's already broken, something's out. It's already too late. HSM that's not communicating, a CA that filled up its database, insecure template that got pinged on pen test. It's almost always too late, right?
Right. Yeah, all the time. And it's ironic, because I talk to our clients, and I try to stay in touch with everyone, and I'll say, you remember the command? And there's certain things that just make it super easy to look at. And they're like, oh, I should remember, which tells me as soon as we're done talking, they kind of forget. So it's easy to do.
And when I think about the rest of the modern IT infrastructure, cyber components, most organizations have a pretty good way of saying, I know what's happening with my firewalls, I know what's happening with my endpoints. That visibility is in a proactive way. Like they're monitoring those bits and pieces. And while I think a lot of the attention has been, hey, I know what certs I have on my endpoints, and I've got visibility, kind of my approach has been changing the conversation a little bit to say, the certificates and the life cycle, important problem. Having that inventory of certificates, important problem. And not having that means you're going to have issues. You're going to not have control over those identities going on to endpoints. important problem, but that's not the only problem when it comes to PKI.
Right. But that gets the most attention.
It is, and it's an important problem. I mean, nothing changes in that regard, but it really is the output from a factory. It's kind of like saying, I own the factory, and you're only counting the boxes that go out the door, and you're not thinking about the machinery and the equipment and the personnel inside that it takes to make that widget. You're just counting the widgets and making sure that they go to the right place. Important problem, but you can't really have control over a technology where it's just a big black box. And I think where a lot of customers struggle and where we still see problems today is not having visibility into the factory, the PKI itself.
Yeah.
So combined with leadership going, I don't really speak PKI or PKI health. It winds about being outages, and we still deal with a lot of outages.
Yes. Yeah, we do. And I think to take it just a step further, that a lot of times I think the people doing it, since it doesn't get the attention, don't always get the recognition. And I would say over the last 5 years, the amount of turnover on our clients' PKI teams has been significant.
Oh, yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. I think, I don't necessarily know that I would call it a brain drain, but it's definitely harder and harder to find organizations that have a dedicated PKI person or multiple people that own the tool as well as other tools. It seems to be a technology that is now one of 16 that somebody owns.
Right.
So it's harder. It used to be one thing for an organization to say, oh, I've got a couple subject matter experts. We're going to write tools. We're going to be all over our PKI on a regular basis, and that's all that we do. I don't think that kind of throw humans at the problem solution exists anymore.
I don't think so either. I think basically what we've tried to do, both through helping clients interact, my work with them, your work with them, but also our tools, is to make it easier to do. So when a new one, somebody does land in that role, what can we do to get them up to speed and see what's important as quick as possible?
I think the other thing, it kind of surprises me. I've never thought about expressing this before. I think an interesting thing about a PKI is it's not a matter of when it will fail or if it will fail, it will fail.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's perfectly designed, the fact that it has things like a CA certificate with a defined lifetime validity, it has things like publishing a CRL. Even if you set it up perfectly, if nothing goes wrong, it has the ultimate failure. It will expire someday.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no such thing. Like we can look at things like a firewall or an Active Directory and say, hey, I set it up. As long as nothing goes wrong, it'll keep working in perpetuity, right? This PKI has an ultimate ticking time bomb that you're kind of constantly having to manage and push out.
Yeah, certificate expire. You're 100% right. That's
the doomsday machine. It's the doomsday. Or I used to kind of think of this like this is dating myself. There was a TV show a long time ago called Lost. And at one point they find a hatch in an island, and hopefully there's no spoilers I'm giving away. So if anyone hasn't seen a TV show from 20 years ago called Lost, there was this whole thing where they found this hatch and there was a computer and no one knew why, but every once in a while they had to go down and press some buttons to reset some sequence on the computer, or the island would end or the world would end or something. But it needed constant maintenance just to keep something cataclysmic from happening. And in some ways, PKI is a bit the same way of even regardless of the pen test or security issues, it needs care and feeding.
They were going in there to publish a root CRL. That's what they were doing in there.
There we go.
That's what they were doing.
Smoke monster away. They published a CRL. This is brilliant. They were clearly entering their PIN code for their thumb drive to sign on to the root. I don't know why I never thought it's perfect. It's disconnected. It had no internet access. Has all the hallmarks of publishing a root CRL. I think I need to go back and watch this series again. I think the other thing, and I'm sure you've got a couple of stories you can tell, almost every problem that we've seen with a PKI could have been prevented. Like there's no such thing as radons falling through atmospheric levels and striking satellites that fall on top of the CA, and there's totally out of nowhere. Any memorable things from this year that come to mind without divulging too much about any one customer?
There's always been simple things, simple questions that lead to deeper issues. One of my favorites ever, it wasn't this year, a couple of years ago, is why is my CA only issuing 17-day certificates?
Yeah.
Because it was going to expire in 17 days.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
The template's fit for 2 years. Why am I only
right, exactly? Yeah. Why are we getting 17 days but 18 yesterday? Simple things, like that is, I think it's typical because if you don't know to check it, it's been working just fine. And then we end up on a different call.
Yeah, I used to like the fact that when I would do our training classes, I would kind of pull a magical Swami approach and say, hey, if you got a certificate issued from your CA, I could probably tell you exactly what the problem is just by looking at the expiration date. And it was usually something like, if it comes out and it's valid for something like 17 days and 34 hours, your CA is about to expire.
Yeah.
You get a certificate that gets squeezed out and it's good for 6 months. You've got a registry key that is set for something. And if you get a certificate that's good for like 2 years, then it's your template that's limiting it. It used to really kind of freak customers out. So I don't get to pull that trick too much. I think one of the other ones I kind of vaguely remember, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much. You had one where a customer had a CRL issue, but it wasn't affecting anything. They had set up a new load balancer, and the CRL is supposed to be available in like 3 or 4 locations. Mm-hmm. But because the new load balancer wasn't configured, everything was working, but only because it was all going to one location.
Correct.
Not the 4 or whatever.
That false sense of security there. And but I will say, and to be fair, I've also had a client one time that called and said everything's down. And we went directly thinking it was that, went to all the load balance servers. It was the load balancer that had indeed failed. So you do have to check it at times just to see, but you're right. That is something that happens where you think you're running in a condition where everything's working. You'll have an HSM that goes offline. You don't realize it.
Yeah.
So you might run months. Yeah. And then if you get a hiccup, then you're down. Then you find out, well, the other one was down for a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, this point, kind of the small items is, it's like this one small thing happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens.
Perfect storm.
And then there's an outage, right? And each one of those were things that could have been seen. Like I remember one issue that we worked with a customer where they were patching their CA inadvertently. They assumed that their CAs weren't getting the patch like all the other endpoints. And this particular patch had pushed out some updated network drivers, I think for like network capturing or something like that. And the PKI team certainly didn't know that this was going on. And it disrupted the network stack enough that the HSMs became a problem. And it couldn't talk to the HSM, and it sat there for a number of days, couldn't publish the CRL, then fell over. So it was like, wasn't even a misconfiguration. It wasn't anything the team had done, but because they didn't really know what was happening until it broke, that's the only time we find out about it.
Yep. Yeah.
I think one of the things I've been hearing, when you do reach out, we were kind of joking at the top of the deck about how you can still come to me for issues from time to time. I think one of the things looking back on the year, I heard a lot from you is just ongoing problems with HSMs, and not just like this, it's on the network and has an issue. We've seen a fair number and heard a fair number of stories of customers using cloud HSMs, which are kind of seen as, it's in the cloud, it must be secure. But we've been seeing some interesting things. Anything that you would touch on?
We saw, and I don't think there's a huge secret. Talos had an issue earlier this year, which took down all their dpod. And what was interesting is that actually one of our clients sent it to me from Downfinder. And it showed all these huge companies with the same spikes. Like, well, we know who uses dpod. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other one is one of our customers who is using the Intrust HSM as a service. That's an interesting service in that they're essentially just racking an HSM for a customer.
Just yep.
And while it's in the cloud and while it looks cloud forward, I think an interesting thing that customers should keep in mind is it's equivalent to running a single HSM in your own environment. It's just a single HSM in someone else's environment. And in their case, there was an outage. Was that just with the one HSM or their location?
It was locational. And that was, again, like you mentioned earlier, it's all those little things that lead up to big thing. They did network maintenance. And somehow the client had fallen off of the distribution list. So they didn't know. So they called on a Saturday. And so I was on an outage call, and it took a while to figure out, oh yeah, that this is planned outage. They just didn't know.
Yeah. And it's almost one where they're now looking at it as, okay, great. Now I need to have two instances in the cloud. So I think an interesting thing that we're seeing is you can't depend on things like cloud HSM. And this is not a vendor specific thing. It's just thinking about a cloud HSM is a instance, a location. And just like you wouldn't deploy on-prem. So I think because we're seeing more and more customers using this, we are seeing more of these problems. Yeah, in this case, it was got dropped off of an email alerting about a maintenance window, didn't know, affected production. So visibility, it's nothing that happened. But again, if you just assume the PKI is there, it just had absolutely no way of resolving this. So I see Reba had just kind of put it out there. If the client had known, well, I think there's really two things, right? One could have been just knowing, hey, our PKI is going to be affected and down for a period of time with that maintenance. Or we have two instances because all of these providers have multiple data centers in multiple locations. So with Intrust, we've done this with some customers where we have an instance in multiple data centers, right?
We would try that, or it's a hybrid where it's one on-prem, one in the cloud. And this particular instance, again, little things add to something big. We didn't know about the outage because of the network, and it just so happened their CRL was right there.
Yeah.
So
combination of
had we known,
if you had visibility to know, hey, my CRL is going to expire right during this outage,
we would have signed it for longer.
Out the CRL,
taken other things to make sure we were covered for that time period.
Yeah, because honestly, if I know my PKI is going to be affected by an HSM outage, I don't have to have that HSM up and running to be able to use and validate certificates.
No,
but if my CRL is going to be due to be published,
that's a problem.
If I know that, I can publish it before.
Correct.
And then, the CA can be shut down during the outage. All the certificates keep working. So it's kind of that knowledge is power sort of thing. But if you don't know when your CRL is expiring, so this is a combination of, I'm almost wondering, even if they had gotten the email, if they didn't have a tool to tell them when the CRL was expiring, they may not have actually bothered to go figure out, is this going to be at the same time? Maybe not made that connection, but by having a tool available where they go, there's the CRL. Oh yeah, I do need to do something about it. So visibility, it hasn't changed.
Exactly.
So why don't we leave some valuable stuff with whoever winds up watching this waste of PKI time? I'll take the first one. One of the things I've talked quite a bit with customers and leadership when I can is just thinking about ownership. A lot of times, I just did a podcast for an endpoint focused podcaster. It's going to come out next month. But in that one, I just talked about, don't be afraid of PKI. If you're not talking about it, if you don't hear other people talking about it and you're at an enterprise, it's probably somewhere. So if someone doesn't own it, maybe it's not you, but make sure that somebody's thinking about it. Make sure that if you're in IT, if you're in cyber, if you're watching this, the odds are you have some involvement or dependency on PKI. And if you're not certain that somebody owns it, it's possible that no one does. I mean, how many times have you heard Bob built that, Steve built that, They're not here. I haven't touched it. I'm afraid to do anything with it.
That's
almost their fault.
that's pretty common. I would say that's probably high 70%.
Yeah, yeah. So if PKI isn't part of the regular conversation in your organization, just make sure that somebody does. That's all I'm asking, right? Don't worry about tools. Don't worry about processes. Just make sure that somebody owns the thing, then go from there. So what would you add on the second point, maintaining hygiene?
Again, just keep a track of where we are, and like you said, if someone does own it, someone has an idea of what is there. So going back to the client that had that issue, had they known that ahead of time, or known where their CR rules or how long they were valid for.
Yeah.
And if we see this outage window is 24 hours, are we going to make that? Some of our clients run pretty tight CRLs.
Yeah.
Even with an overlap period, are we taking full advantage of what's available to us?
Yeah.
Like an overlap period for our CRLs. If anyone has have used those, they're great things to get us through. Just keeping track of where it is. So if there is a problem, we see this a lot where during CA renewals, for instance, did you tell the help desk or who's going to get these calls that this is likely going to be the issue they're going to need? Do you facilitate making it easier for everyone to get the help they need? So just kind of laying the groundwork and being aware of what's probably going to come and helping everyone out as much as you can.
Yeah. I think the other thing I would say is don't take the output of the fact that things are working as indication that things are okay. So when we kind of talk about hygiene, this isn't just, hey, I know I published a CRL and my certificates are working, so it must be okay. If you're putting CRLs in 4 locations, you should be checking to make sure that all 4 locations are working. If you're renewing CAs, you should be making sure that each CA key is preserved and is being used to create a CRL as long as it's valid, right? So it's more than just the server hasn't fallen over and told me it stopped working. It takes care and feeding, and it's understanding where all those bits and pieces are. And I think there's ownership, and then there's validation and visibility, making sure this stuff is working. And then I think the other thing is just trying, like, what can you do to reduce the surprises? If management has the approach of, I don't think PKI, I spell it KIP, and go create a script, and it hasn't bitten us yet. What can you do to reduce those surprises? Because if you're not actively managing the PKI, as I talked about a few minutes ago, it will bite you at some point. And maybe it's just the expiration at the end. Maybe it's a maintenance thing. Maybe it's a misconfiguration. What can you do to get rid of those surprises? Maybe it's simply, hey, I got to go in and check the system once in a while. It's kind of like the mechanic down the street. You take your car in once in a while, you get the oil changed, and you happen to see, oh, you got a belt that's loose, right? So spend a little time. If management says, hey, we're going to solve this problem by just throwing your resources at it, I hate to admit, if you own the PKI or someone in your team does, you need to go in and you need to check this stuff out. Don't just wait for it to become a surprise, because surprises are what cause outages in environments.
Right. The other thing that I've started to really press before we move here is trying to have even if it's not incredibly detailed, some type of diagram that shows the pieces, because everyone will look at a picture.
Yeah.
And then when you when you see everything, you see your HSMs over here and your database and your CRL servers, everything, and your interaction with clients. To me, that is really helpful at times to really kind of illustrate all the moving pieces and what we need to look at.
Agreed. I know you and I won't mention any names. We know exactly which customer. When I say I know one customer that does an amazing job at documenting PKI, and if that person ever retires and wants to come do documentation for us,
I would love it.
But it's great. Every time the change goes on, they go, here's the diagram. I mean, it's the port levels, it's all the communication things. You're right. And it's just another form of visibility, right? When we talk about documentation, it's just not in my box.
No one has to go through a whole big document, run book or whatever. Here's something to stare at and look at and guide you where you need to be pretty quickly. So I've been really trying to push our clients and help when we do assessments, at least get them started on that path. Do a diagram for them.
So I think maybe the key takeaway is every outage in a PKI is just about preventable, and anything that you can do to prevent an outage solves a business impacting outage. We know the majority of the time, if it's a surprise, it's going to impact the organization. Very rarely will you get the PKI failure that happens, on a Saturday and you're sitting there with nothing to do and you solve it before it impacts the business. And every PKI has built-in failures. The expiration of the CA, something that somebody did 5 years ago, or something you inadvertently did last week because you followed the documentation from Palo Alto or Cisco and they told you to click these 8 things that were all horribly wrong, and it bites you 6 months from now.
And I just, another thing that has come in not too long ago was there were changes in server 2022, for instance, where suddenly after a reboot, if you have an HSM, the service won't start. If you're not running a delayed, so even if you're doing everything right, to be aware that these changes can happen. And if your CA stays down, you're going to fail.
Yeah. Well, I know we've just about run out of time, which made me realize we were going to talk a little bit about the Microsoft CRL partitioning and some of the testing we've done. So I think I just come up with a great idea for our January webinar. How about you and I top the beginning of the year, and we'll talk about the testing around the CRL partitioning, some interesting things. We can certainly see the Microsoft development team that added these features didn't quite do the same things that the old team would have done. Interesting things like explicit variables and registry keys, as well as what happened when you change parameters from a large number of partitions to a smaller number of partitions.
Drop a hint here. It's tread lightly.
Yes, exactly. So if you haven't done CRL partitioning, maybe wait, and we'll share the results of what we've been able to find as we've been learning it to incorporate in the Spotlight. I know our marketing team is heading into the holiday season, so it's nothing like throwing them a curveball. Especially since I think Mike, who heads that effort for us, is going on vacations, going out of the country. So, Mike, you've got a whole new task for us. January, let's do CRL partition. So, thank you to everyone that came to our webinars this year. Thank you for showing up here in December. I hope this brought a little bit of PKI joy to your life. Anyone that that did get a chance to join, please share. We'll get this up and going, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year, 2026. Jake, any predictions for what PKI is going to be like next year? Nothing? He must have already dropped off. All right, so he's already into 2026. So I'm going to put it there. PKI is still going to have visibility problems. Jake's going to have occasional lockups, and we'll have a whole new slate of webinars in the new year. So have a great new year, everybody. Take care.